Well, good morning.
Morning.
How's everybody? Good morning. On this snowy day. On the speaker. And so, as usual, you can hear me okay? So today, we recognize birthday, Dogen Zenji's birthday. We don't study Dogen Zenji, we don't recognize Dogen Zenji as a kind of cult figure or something like that. You know, we don't get too, we're not fixated on Dogen, but virtually everything that we understand about Soto Zen comes primarily from Dogen Zenji. He brought the teaching that he woke up to when he was in China and established it in Japan. And of course, it became uniquely Japanese, as it should, just like our practice becomes uniquely our own. We're not trying to be somebody else. You know, the world we live in is so filled with problems now and concerns and very real ones, that we might get a little bit misled into thinking that the way we understand the world's problems and take care of our own personal life is the same as how we practice Zen. And it's natural to do that. But Dogen Zenji changed that mentality from if I want to be a good farmer or a good engineer or a good doctor, I certainly have to study all the methods and techniques and important aspects of those activities and professions. Practicing Soto Zen or Zen in particular, is not the same. He changed it from I have Buddha nature or Buddha nature is somehow out there to you are Buddha nature. There's no separation, no gap between who you are and Buddha nature. The question of how do you want to live your life is another one. So he changed the style. He said that this practice originally is perfect and everything is included in it. How could it be contingent on something we do to make it happen? The practice vehicle is self-sufficient, he says in instructions for Zazen. We couldn't believe in a means to brush it clean. This comes from the sixth patriarch, who was an illiterate woodcutter and working in a monastery. And the abbot at that time, looking for a successor, said, put a poem on the wall, all you adepts, and let me know what you think. And so the chief disciple wrote on the wall something like, the mind isn't awakening, and all they have to do is brush it clean, and there it is. So Queen Ing said, had somebody read it to him and said, I want to answer that. Write this for me. Where is this dust collecting? What needs to be cleaned? Can you show where is this cleanliness that you think you're going to achieve? So the abbot said, well, if you get that, you can teach. But he also said, you better get out of here because you're not a monk, and if I give you this permission, there's going to be upheaval in the monastery. So he left. So, however, there's a catch. The catch is, if we think of ourselves as Buddhas, already perfect, then we have separated ourselves from practice. Same way that if we try to find it out there somewhere, we separate ourselves. So sitting in the upright posture of Zazen, beyond methodology and technique, or better yet, never mind methodology and technique, your own life sitting is the same as Buddha nature. Making that real is expressing that is what Dogen said we should do. So he said in the Bendawa, which is the endeavor to practice the way, he said that all enlightened beings, individually as people, you and me, transmit this teaching. It's not conceivable, but there it is. It's what he called receptive samadhi. It's kind of the way it's translated. Juju Zanmai means self-realized, nothing outside, not something to achieve, not something to attain, not something to do. There it is. Because of that, we can address the problems of life as they are, problems. They not disturb us. They can't disturb our practice. That the reality of a problem is that you address it. That's not outside practice. You may not find the answer in a Buddhist book or any book, but our life, problems and all, are not separate from awakening. Sitting upright, practicing Zazen, is the authentic gate to free yourself from unconfined realms. Free ourselves from this, from what we think is a confining reality. There is ordinary life, there's practice, and then there's a result. And I need to get there, where this result is. We all always abide in this Dharma, we always do. So he said the difference is that a person who is awake, a person who has not encumbered by so-called individuality, not encumbered by society, just living completely in it. He said that this kind of person realizes that the Dharma is abundant in them, but they don't leave a trace of it behind. They don't actually leave something called awareness for us to see. They don't establish something like that. Dogen Zenji didn't leave an enlightened reality behind. Only the way each one of us can step into that reality. He said, but normally we move in the Dharma, but we're not clear in our consciousness. We haven't seen that yet. We see objects, we see people, we see individuals, we see silos, consciousness. Zazen allows us to see that consciousness as complete, not siloized. So the concentrated practice, Dogen says, the way I'm speaking, he said, allows all things to come forth in realization, to practice beyond just letting things go, passing through the barrier of dualistic thinking. Don't concern yourself with something that limits you. It's not really limiting at all. Don't be hindered by concepts and theories. Use them, embrace them, look at them. Spiritual practice in Dogen's world is not a struggle to get something or achieve enlightenment. It's an expression of awakened life, awakened reality. We are expressing it. And moreover, he said, it's not even about us. If you get a chance to read this is one of these. This is the wholehearted way. Bendawa. That explains Dogen's view of Zazen. Which is, boundless. We're not bound up in our own ideas alone, but our own ideas alone are exactly practice. So it's important for Soto Zen practitioners for us to somehow understand and help others understand that we are not trying to get anywhere. We're not trying to clear things up, but live fully, harmoniously, balanced in the world we're living in. Easier said than done, but there it is. So what did Dogen find important besides the fact that there's a mistaken idea that Buddha nature is outside or somewhere, and certain people can realize it and some people can't? It takes some sort of spiritual ability. Well, he said that there are three things you have to do. Don't neglect lineage. Look at the teaching as it unfolded. He did not look at it as a linear reality. He looked at it as part of the circle of the way, or continuous reality. Lineage, past lineage is happening right now. We're a part of it. We are the lineage. And maybe not so known to everybody though, but it's very important, is the universal support of, from a religious standpoint, unseen deities, meaning we cannot find compassion, but we know the power. We can't find wisdom, but we know the power of wisdom. These are bodhisattva archetypes. Manjushri is the bodhisattva wisdom. That's us, our ability to see beyond boundaries. So the unseen power that we give shape to is very important. It's not a scientific endeavor. We're not trying to prove a theory. And perhaps the most important thing, of course, is then all of this, the lineage, the unseen power of a deity practice, compassion, wisdom, great activity, being able to expand beyond our boundaries, is all included in the practice of Zazen, but it's not a thought process. It's the reality of practice life. A practitioner, Dogen said, should not practice the Buddha Dharma for their own sake, to gain fame or profit, to attain good results, or to pursue some miraculous power. Practice only for the sake of the Buddha Dharma, which means for the sake of everyone. We're not trying to fix people's minds, correct ills of society. That's a different effort, important as that may be. Zazen is not meditation practice, he said. It's the Dharma gate. It's, for lack of a better word, faith. If somebody were to ask me, why? Why do you spend all this time sitting Zazen? I could only say that because I have faith in the teaching and the practice. I'm not looking for results. The results are going to come, and we see it right away. It's a natural part of this practice. More harmony, more balanced, able to see things clearer, not being caught by so much misinformation that we give ourselves already in our heads, let alone what comes from the outside. But Zazen is its own reward, Dogen tells us. So each moment, regardless of where you are in the world and where you fit on a timeline of life, that is an expression of Buddha nature. How do we act on that? How do we help others feel comfortable themselves? we're very careful to not put too much of a litmus test on practice. Just the forms that we understand are conducive to awakening, conducive to meditation. Without practice, he said, without identifying, then realization is very difficult. We want to be people with our eyes closed and wonder why bother opening our eyes if we already have the ability to see. That's the kind of mistake we make when we think everything is Buddha nature and we don't have to make an effort. Careful, my teacher told me. Be free, but don't be caught by the freedom. So, nobody has to tell us that there's good and bad and dualistic thinking and struggle and strife. But as the Heart Sutra tells us, this is our way of seeing things. It's not the actual reality. So we see things in a way that's beneficial as best we can for everyone. Even those people who would make our blood boil. There are plenty of those. So, and it's a complete practice. Picking and choosing is not a very helpful way of doing things. It's a complete practice. So just like our life is complete, what part of your life do you think is not good for practice? Not good for revealing this Buddha nature? Well, we have to know our world. But don't get caught by knowledge. Just sit in this practice, in the proper sitting, upright practice. Every day we can. We study Dogen. Remember that we're not studying something external. It's not a cult, kind of cult fixation. Dogen Zenji's teaching is what we do ourselves, and we clarify it through his teaching. And it looks, feels, and sounds completely different because we are. Who is not an authentic practitioner of Zen? Where does such a person even live? Greet people, at least we greet people, even for a second. Even if we can't put our hands together like this when we meet them, the spirit should be that way. We should greet people in that kind of spirit. And the conversation may be quite different, but the spirit is this. It's very important to generate that kind of makeup, personal makeup. Someone who, in Japan, when they take a child to a Buddha statue for the first time, a temple, and they want to see if that child has a propensity to practice. If the child can put their hands together like this and bow, that's enough. The child is seen as fine, they're good to go. They don't care if they're intellectually adept or whatever it is. If they could do this simple practice, that's enough. Really difficult for us to do that with each other. Not us, but society. If we do this in our spirit and think, what am I getting out of it? That's not Zazen. This is not a struggle. We're not trying to create Dogen's world on our own. If you see the Buddha on the road, kill him, is the old saying. We see Dogen as some kind of Dogen-centric fixation, get rid of it. The concentrated endeavor of the way I'm speaking of allows all things to come forth in realization. to practice going beyond, even going beyond letting go, passing through this barrier of dualistic life, dropping off these limitations. How could you be hindered by concepts and ideas? You're welcome. We don't have to. What we act on is our choice. Hopefully we act on harmony and balance. Another interesting thing about Dogen Zenji's teaching, I learned, he lived in the 13th century and wrote many instructions, teachings. But it wasn't for 200 or 300 years that his writings were known. So maybe 700 years ago or something like that, or even less. They were buried in a monastic world. What did Soto Zen monks do when they didn't read the Dogen's work? How did they know what to do? They didn't. They were a little embarrassed when they said this, that they had uncovered Dogen's teaching so late. Well, they sat zazen according to the teaching that was given to them, and the same one that was given to Dogen, the same one that we have. They didn't need 89 fascicles of Dogen's teaching to sit zazen. But we have them, we should make use of them. He called this the wholehearted way, Dendo. The rest of this book, by the way, the teaching, is a question and answer. He kind of poses questions and then answers them. And a lot of it has to do with how do we know, how could we be certain that we're actually practicing this teaching and not some mistake. It's interesting, and the rest of it is very interesting. But it is this, when you sit zazen, what part of you is false? What part of you is untrue? Come on. I don't know, we can talk all day, but if we look at the world now, there's so many difficulties, challenges, and some of them really tough to deal with. If we consider those to be something outside our practice, then we'll either want to push them away or deal with them. We may have to push something away and deal with things, but it's not outside our practice. It's not anti-Buddhism or something. Just sit in this upright posture. And each moment that we do engage in our practice, look at how the teachers in the past have identified these. What is wholesome? What is unwholesome? How do we, if we know what to do in a zendo, what about in a grocery store? Although I don't think we go to grocery stores anymore. Anyway, ordinary mind, ordinary life is the way. That is the teaching. And there we realize, there we actualize. And this posture is already complete in and of itself. We don't have to add or subtract. This kind of confidence or settledness is very important for our practice. We don't have a carrot, we're not following something. It's completely our own self-realized practice. There's a lot of freedom in that, there's a lot of responsibility in that for ourselves and others. And it's lively, it changes, it moves around. You're not outside looking in ever. The external support is also internal. Just continue this practice. And the realization, actualization appears of itself. This much I know. From there, Dogen Zenji wrote how to be a community together. We could write our own book. First, we